So freedom from diabetes is what we are looking for here at Cosmic Abundance Hub. And let's go, and I will be asking certain questions to Anita, and Anita is gonna, based on research and therapeutic experience and her personal experience, is gonna answer some of them. So in this video, we're gonna work around 6 major questions, which I'm gonna pose to Anita, and we're gonna learn and discuss together. Let's go. Anita, what is diabetes? For a person jisko kuch nahi pata, this is a major challenge. Most of us are just taking in medicine, eating pills day and night without knowing what is it all about. So for those people who don't have any idea, what is diabetes?
So diabetes is, in a layman's term, is the presence of high blood sugar levels in the blood. Your doctor will say your blood report is showing that you have very high blood sugar levels. Now, why this is happening? Why is there the sugar levels are so high in your blood? Now, this happens when the body is not able to use the glucose from the food, because there is some problem in the production of the hormone called insulin. Now, insulin is a hormone which is responsible for the uptake of glucose from the blood to the cell, for the metabolism of the food we eat, so that the sugar goes into so that the adequate amount of sugars get pumped in the blood, because the body has to have a supply of blood glucose in case of emergencies, in case of exhaustion. But what happens when the insulin levels, either when they are not produced or when the cells are not able to respond to the insulin because of certain physical damage to the cells or some other issues to the cell, they're not able to respond to the insulin, then the sugar levels remain high. The sugars are not getting converted to fuel in the cells, nor are they being able to get stored as fat in the body. So the sugar levels become very high, and over a period of time, even if you are to, over a period of time, they start showing certain problems in the body, because the high blood sugar levels, the cells are not able to take the glucose, the body goes into an exhaustion, into most of the people complain of tiredness. I think that's the most common symptom. They complain of tiredness. I feel so weak. I eat well, but I just don't have the energy.
So the energy level is depleting because there is lack
usually
of
at that time only they go to the doctor for a checkup, and when they do their checkup, the sugar levels are high. So
basically the sugar level is high, but it's not getting absorbed in the body.
Yes.
And because it's not getting absorbed, the body is not able to use that energy which is there in the sugar. So, and why is it happening, and how does it happen?
Yeah. So before explaining why and how, maybe just talk very briefly about the types of diabetes, because understanding the types is also very important. Usually, broadly, diabetes is classified as type 1, type 2, and there's something called gestational diabetes. And there's one more term called pre-diabetes, which means you have not gone for the full-fledged diabetic stage, but just in the, many people say I have border sugar, borderline sugar. The doctor said I have borderline sugar. So that is the pre-diabetes stage.
Now it has become like, a way to make people scared, because it's like selling the medicines and pre-diabetic. Everybody is pre-diabetic, right?
Yes.
Everybody is pre-diabetic. It is possible. Everybody can sugar go up and down. So we will try to help those people who are pre-diabetic. It is very easy to help them not to get diabetes. We have processes and therapies for that. And even now we're going to talk about solutions. Those who have challenges, who have diabetes at chronic level, like you also, what they can do. We'll be helping them in coming days. So let's understand now how it happens, and why is sugar not able to be absorbed by the body?
Yes. So in our body, we have the endocrine system, and of which the pancreas produce insulin. Now, insulin is the only hormone in our body which can reduce the sugar levels. All other hormones will raise the sugar levels. Now, why this is so? Because sugars, the glucose, are the main fuel for the body to carry out all its function, and so much so that our brain cells has the highest requirement of glucose. Now, since insulin is the only hormone reducing the glucose levels. Now, how does it reduce the glucose levels? By converting all the excess glucose in the blood to glycogen in the liver. So, glycogen is again a reserve for any time there's a need for sugars, it will immediately get converted from glycogen to glucose. And another way it does, this is a short-term storage. Short-term storage, it gets stored as glycogen, and long-term, insulin converts glucose to fat in our fat cells. And this is again for the emergencies. And for immediately, what that insulin does is, now the glucose cannot just like that enter the cell. The cell will take in glucose only when there is a requirement. Like as part of carrying out its normal function, when it requires glucose, it will give us a message to the brain, more specifically to the pituitary gland present in the brain, that the glucose levels in the cells are reducing. Let's take a skeletal muscle as an example. The glucose levels in the skeletal cells or any vital organ is reducing, it's going down. So let's pump in more glucose. So the food we eat, it has protein, carbohydrates and fat, of which the carbohydrate we taken, whether in the form of simple carbohydrate or complex carbohydrate as starches, everything as part of the digestive process is converted to simple sugars. Now the body, even if you consume complex carbohydrate as starch, can utilize that carbohydrate only in the simple form, which is called as the glucose. So even the sugar which we consume, it has glucose and fructose, the normal white sugar. Even that is converted into glucose because glucose is the fuel of the cell.
So all the forms of energies are being converted to glucose finally to be absorbed by the body cells, right?
Yes. Yeah. So when the message comes that there is less glucose, then immediately insulin production is increased so that the receptors, the cells have certain receptors for glucose to bind and to enter the cell. It's basically the insulin is nothing but the key to allow the glucose to enter into the cell.
Great.
Now, in normal scenario, the insulin levels goes up, the insulin production is increased, the body starts using up the sugars in the glucose in the bloodstream to the cells. Now, in diabetes, what happens is, in type 1 diabetes at least, the insulin production is completely stopped because the body attacks its own cells. So in pancreas, we have two types of cells, the alpha cells and the beta cells. Now the beta cells are the ones which produce insulin. Now in type 1 diabetes, what happens is the beta cells are damaged, which called as an autoimmune, when the body tries to destroy itself. Now, why this is happening? There is no, there's no proper evidence to say what is going wrong here. But people say that there could be a virus attack, and sometimes the virus protein is similar to our body's insulin, the particular protein sequence. So the body mistakes our human insulin as a virus and triggers an attack.
Okay.
So this is one of the research which has been proved that certain viruses can trigger an autoimmune response in the body. So where the body destroys itself. So in type 1 diabetes, that happens. Now in type 2 diabetes, what happens is chronic stress, chronic hectic lifestyle, and working the night shifts, which causes a chronic state of stress, which raises the stress hormone levels. Now remember, insulin is the only hormone which can bring the sugar levels down, whereas all other hormones are going to increase it. So there is more and more glucose produced in the body. Why? Because the stress hormone levels are high.
Yeah.
And this again leads to exhaustion. See, the insulin can carry, just like a normal human, like when you do a workout, you can, let's say, jog for half an hour for normal average person and say jog for half an hour. After that, you go into a state of exhaustion. You really need that rest. But what happens in the presence of these stress hormones? Insulin is forced to work at overtime. which leads to the exhaustion of the beta cells start becoming exhausted. They say like, that's it, I can't produce this insulin anymore.
Yeah.
So that's one of the scenario. The other scenario is the cells. As I said, the cells have receptors. Because only when the receptors are there, can the glucose enter the cells.
Perfect.
When there is a problem in that, then what happens? The insulin level production is normal, but the cells are not able to take in the insulin. Basically, the insulin is not able to bind to the receptor so that the glucose can enter inside the cell. This happens in cases of obesity, when there is so much of fat deposition, when there is too much of muscle mass. It's again a strain for the cells. It's like the cells are traumatized in this case. So that in such a scenario, type 2 diabetes develops. So here, either there is a exhaustion of the pancreatic cells, or there is an overproduction of insulin, or the cells which needs to respond to the insulin, they are damaged in some way, again because of stress, injury, some health conditions. So all these conditions.
Thank you for that detailed technical analysis, and I hope our viewers are able to understand all the technical data, which is very important before we start curing a disease and therapies. आपको समझ आना चाहिए what kind of disease you are having in your body. Now you should be able to understand it in order to find a solution when doctors are not able to help you much. Let's go now, Anita, to the causes of diabetes.